Hi everyone, welcome to the WhiteleyVerse with me, Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the WhiteleyVerse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
A Holly Way to Go. The 14th of December 2022. London, England. Normally, on a cold December afternoon, retired Detective Kendra O'Connor would be thinking about what to cook her and her amazing husband for dinner, planning her grand Christmas celebrations, and deciding what to wear to one of the Christmas parties that she went to every single year without fail. This wasn't a normal afternoon. Kendra stood in a very dense forest filled with thick twisted pine, oak and silver birch trees with their leafless branches stretching out in all sorts of directions. Kendra was standing right next to one silver birch that had two branches so intertwined that she just knew that whatever caused those branches to become so twisted couldn't have been short of brutal. Kendra much preferred the wonderful coolness of the ground, and she was more than that. The morning frost, mist and fog had mostly been burnt around by the weak dim sun that Kendra sadly knew would set in the next hour. And then the temperature would seriously drop. Kendra was already wearing her thickest winter coat, gloves and trousers that she owned. She was a 67-year-old, for goodness sake. She was fairly sure that she wasn't even meant to be out in these close to freezing temperatures. But as the hints of roasted peanuts, nutmeg cookies and sawdust filled the air, Kendra was glad she was here in the icy cold forest without a shred of warmth, because she was here on a very dark and twisted and awful case that Kendra just wanted to solve. Kendra's best friend's retired police officer Patricia Nelson, wearing a long black fake fur coat, hiking boots and pink gloves, stood to her left, and it was surprising to see Patricia without her black laptop bag. She was the techie one of the group, and Kendra was always amazed at how the 70-year-old woman was good on the laptop. She could probably outdo Kendra's grandchildren with her computer skills. Then to Kendra's right was her other friend, and the point of contact with the police commissioner was retired Detective Jeff Long. Kendra had to admit that the atmosphere was a little tense between Jeff and Patricia because poor Jeff, bless him, had been working around Kendra's kitchen table, and Patricia had placed her laptop on her seat because the table was covered in folders. Then silly Jeff had thought the laptop was a very thin cushion, so he sat on it, cracked the outer casing, so Patricia was a little fuming with him at the moment. Kendra just hoped her anger might warm up the air around them. And they were all here today because they were members of the cold case task force that always sought to solve London's weirdest, toughest, and more brutal cold cases. And this one was particularly new. The three of them had spent the morning trying to solve the disappearance and most probably murder of a 26-year-old male university student called George Carrie. He studied biomedical science at University College London, was liked by everyone, and had a great boyfriend that loved him dearly. George had disappeared 5 years ago, after going out on a night out with some university friends, and the boyfriend was busy studying for his exams in the library with over 100 witnesses. The family was up north and wasn't in London for the disappearance, and not a single one of the friends or people at the university had a motive to kidnap George. There were no leads. Not a shred of evidence, and the only reason the police believed George was missing in the first place was because of a single frame of security camera footage showing George running and checking behind him as he presumably ran away from something or someone. "Do you think we'll find him?" Patricia asked as she blew into her gloves. Kendra slowly nodded, as the three of them focused right ahead of them on the two teams of white-clothed crime scenes techs that were currently carefully slicing, cutting and hacking their way through a massive pile of holly in an effort to get to a festive tarp that was hidden under it all. "I just don't understand how a killer got the body out here in the first place," Jeff said. The three of them had only got the case this morning, and because of the sheer coldness of the temperature and Kendra's husband working, they had agreed to work in Kendra's kitchen. Which Kendra was more than happy with, because it meant her coffee machine, cake and ice cream in the kitchen were very close to hand. Kendra still didn't exactly know how she was going to explain to her husband later on that each of them had done a large tub of ice cream, 3 mugs of coffee, and finished off a large Victoria sponge between them all. They had all done their fair share of serious eating today, and Kendra supposed that was why it was good to come into the icy cold forest today, to see the discovery of the body. If the body was here at all. Kendra had to admit the case hadn't been easy at all, because the three of them had to somehow work out what George was running away from. But thankfully, because everyone was on social media these days, and Patricia had the ethically questionable computer skills to run an advanced social media search, Patricia managed to find something. After a few moments, Patricia had managed to find 30 images of George running away from a group of UCL students from another course, and they were really shouting and pointing at George like he was a monster. So Kendra had phoned up the university to see if they had any records of the students, and they said they didn't. But Kendra just knew they were lying, so she called up one of her friends at the admin office, and she got her to give her the names of students. Jeff had then seriously failed to conduct a basic social media search of the 5 students, which Kendra and Patricia had laughed about. Thankfully, Patricia managed to find out that the 5 students were all still friends, going to the university, and they were all passionate hikers. Kendra didn't know if that made them crazy or not. There was nothing worse to Kendra than wanting to walk endlessly around. She would have preferred to dance, run, or do something that would at least keep her warm. Then that's the exact moment when Jeff had made himself another mug of coffee. Patricia had placed her laptop on the seat, and Jeff had sat on it. Even now the massive crack echoed in Kendra's ears. "I still couldn't believe that chunky thing still worked," Patricia said, grinning. Kendra playfully hit her best friend, because Kendra had jokingly said when the laptop had broken that Patricia should use Kendra's computer that she got in the 80s. She was amazed that it still worked, but it was a massive chunky white thing, so it had taken about 30 minutes to move from upstairs to the kitchen, and that's when Kendra had a great idea. Clearly, the entire case revolved around the fact that George had been running from the students, and they had managed to work out that he was probably making his way towards the university library, hopefully so his boyfriend could protect him. But Kendra couldn't understand why George had ran past police stations, police officers on patrol, and even a security campus hub. Why not go there for help? So Kendra had searched medical records for the boyfriend, and Jeff had managed to find a bank account charged to the boyfriend for 2 weeks after the disappearance, to a private medical center in the heart of London. And Kendra, putting on her best posh person voice, pretended to be someone from the Department of Health's investigator division. The poor receptionist woman didn't even know that division wasn't real, and Kendra found out that the boyfriend had visited the medical center with a small stab wound, and the private medical center agreed not to inform the police on the patient's obsessive demands. Kendra had had no clue why the boyfriend had gotten stabbed, and refused to tell the police about it, but the fact that George had done the same had to be connected. Well, Kendra still couldn't believe that Jeff had killed off that theory in a second, because he found newspaper reports about George when he was 10 years old after his brother, who was also gay, was murdered by police officers in a homophobic attack, so it was little wonder why George didn't want to go to the police. He was probably more scared about being killed by them than the students chasing him. Yet Kendra was so glad when Patricia had pinged the phones of the 5 students, legally of course, on the night of the disappearance and the 3 nights afterwards, and that's when the case got so strange that it was all up to Kendra to figure it out. "It was always the holly," Kendra said to her best friends as an icy cold breeze brushed past them and even the white-clothed crime scene techs seemed to shake for a moment. "It was silly for the 5 students to come to the woods for the 3 nights after the murder, hun," Patricia said. "Yes," Kendra said, "but if they hadn't then they would be stuck with a body." Her best friend simply nodded, As they watched the crime scene techs cut away the last of the holly bushes that covered some tarp underneath. Once Kendra had gotten Patricia to ping the phones of the students, everyone had struggled to figure out how to find out what the students were doing. This particular forest was a well-known sex spot for students, drug den for dealers, and robbery for the odd wealthy person who drove through here. Patricia had tried to access the wildlife cameras in the forest, but they didn't show the students whatsoever. But they did show plenty of other questionable activity. Jeff had tried to get social media pictures, and any pictures on the interweb, as he sadly called it, but that failed to find the students in the woods. So Kendra had figured out that Patricia needed to check the bank accounts of the 5 students, and when that failed, they needed to check the parents' accounts. That's when the truth was revealed, because the mother of one of the 5 students bought 20 small holly bushes, a tarp, and 5 shovels 2 days after the disappearance. So presumably the first night after the disappearance, the students were looking for a spot to dump the body. The second night they perhaps started digging, but they realized they didn't have the tools. Then the third night they got rid of the body. "Detectives!" a crime scene tech shouted. Kendra rushed over to them to the thick forest and just shook her head. Patricia and Jeff gasped behind Kendra as all 3 of them looked down at the open tarp covering George's rotten body. But even with all the decay, Kendra could still see all the marks, slashes, and cuts in the tarp from the holly. "They covered him in holly when he was still alive," Kendra said. "And detectives, I ain't a scientist, but I bet this needle contains drugs," one of the techs said. Kendra just nodded, as the tech placed the needle in an evidence bag. The students drugged him to make sure he couldn't escape, but they still wanted him to move about. "So he sliced himself on the thorns of holly, hun," Patricia said. "They always wanted him to suffer." "Jesus," Jeff said. "I'll call in the active detectives to take over." Kendra just nodded, as she couldn't tear her eyes away from the rotten corpse at her feet. George must have been in so much pain, agony, and torment as he died. At least the 5 students were going to finally get what was coming to them. And George could finally rest in peace. 6 hours later, Kendra, Patricia, and Jeff sat round Kendra's large black marble coffee table in her living room with massive white mugs of hot chocolate and a very small plate with the remains of cheese sandwiches on them, because after all the ice cream and cake from earlier, none of them wanted too much for their dinner. Kendra was sure that her doctor was going to shout at her, but she didn't care. It was almost Christmas, and she would go back to her diet and healthy living in January like she always did. Her living lights were on low, and Kendra loved it like that because the lighting always helped to create such a festive atmosphere, with the flashing rainbow colors of the Christmas lights on her tree as well. Jeff had gotten the call just a moment ago from the active detectives, and he had taken it in the kitchen, so Kendra was really looking forward to knowing what was the result of the past 6 hours. "All 5 students confessed," Jeff said. "They said that George's boyfriend had wanted to earn a little extra money before the Christmas period, so he could buy his parents, siblings, and boyfriend something extra nice. So he took the 5 students extra tutoring in their free time." Kendra was really starting to like the boyfriend more and more. It really did seem like he was a great person. Then one day when the boyfriend was round the students' dorm, he discovered their drug operation, because the students wanted to get him hooked on coke. The boyfriend said no, and George told him not to do the tutoring anymore. "The student didn't like that, hun, did they?" "No, Patty," Jeff said. The students knew it was only a matter of time before the boyfriend and George spoke up, because they were against drugs. So the 5 students wanted to scare the boyfriend by kidnapping George. Kendra leant forward. She really wasn't liking where this was going. The students grabbed George, knocked him out, and put him in a van. Then George got free and the students knocked him again. Kendra waved her hands in the air. "Okay, but how do 5 university students get from knocking a man out to paralyzing him with drugs, and allowing him to die from exposure whilst holly bushes grow around him?" Jeff bit his lip. "One of the students had a girlfriend doing a biomedical course. She's been arrested because she came up with the plan to get rid of George's body." Kendra just shook her head, as the three of them sat in perfect silence. This really was such a weird case because poor George and his boyfriend had done nothing wrong and they had still died. It was a terrible tale so close to the big day itself, and George would never be able to celebrate another Christmas with the man he loved, and his family would never be able to see the delight on his face when he opened his presents. Even now, Kendra loved seeing that with her own children. Kendra was more than glad those 6 students were going to spend the rest of their lives in prison, because that was exactly what they deserved. And as Kendra went to grab the front door because her amazing sexy husband was home, Kendra just knew she wasn't having any holly in the house for ages, just in case it grew over her and she suffered the same scary fate as George Carrie.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the WhiteleyVerse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ConnorWhiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the WhiteleyVerse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.